Welcome. This presentation will provide examples of ISTEP Plus Experience Online math questions. ISTEP Plus Experience Online is available to students and teachers to help them become familiar with the ISTEP Plus online assessment environment, learn how to properly respond to different item types, and learn how to use the online tools that will be available during the assessment. ISTEP Plus Experience Online is a tool that provides educators and students with the opportunity to familiarize themselves with the testing environment and technology-enhanced and constructed response item types prior to the testing window. By experiencing the technology-related aspects of testing, students can be prepared to show what they know on the online assessment. Constructed response and technology-enhanced items are built to provide a deeper and more real-world assessment and testing experience for students. Including these item types on ISTEP Plus encourages the use of higher-order thinking skills and allows students to experience authentic applications of knowledge to solve real-world problems. The list shown on this slide provides examples of the constructed response and technology-enhanced math item types that a student may encounter when taking the ISTEP Plus 2016-17 online assessment. During this presentation, we will be looking at current ISTEP Plus Experience Online math items. ISTEP Plus Experience Online is arranged in grade bands. There is an ISTEP Plus Experience Online for grades 3 and 4, grades 5 and 6, grades 7 and 8, and grade 10. The items shown on the next few slides are from the grades 3 through 4 band. This slide shows a fill-in-the-blank item. The fill-in-the-blank item type is available across all grades taking ISTEP Plus Mathematics. The student is not provided any answer choices for this item type. Rather, students are expected to type the correct numerical answer into the box. Multiplying 32 by 14 yields a product of $448. So, 448 should be entered inside the answer box to receive credit for this response. Not every symbol on the keyboard is allowed to be entered in a fill-in-the-blank item. Symbols such as the negative sign for grades 3 through 5, the dollar sign, and the percent sign will not be accepted by the online platform in most cases. If students attempt to use these symbols, they will receive an invalid input message, as shown in the bottom right corner of this slide. This message is not an error, but rather informs students that they cannot use that symbol in their answer, and only the correct numeric response is necessary to receive credit for that particular item. For a proper fraction, students need to simply enter the numerator and denominator in the fill-in-the-blank box, as well as separate the numerator from the denominator utilizing a division bar or a fraction bar. This fraction bar will be input inside the box by typing a /. For example, if the fractional answer is 7/9, a student should enter inside the box a 7, a /, and then a 9. Should the fractional answer be a mixed number, students are required to enter that answer in the fill-in-the-blank box as an improper fraction. For example, if the answer is 1 2/3, the student should enter that answer as 5/3 inside the box by first typing a 5, then a /, and finally a 3. Students should not try to enter the answer as the mixed number 1 2/3. For students in grades 6 through 8 and 10, a negative sign is allowed to be entered into the fill-in-the-blank item. Students need to simply find the hyphen and enter it into the box first before continuing with the numeric portion of their answer, which will be entered into the box immediately following the negative sign. If the answer is a terminating decimal, such as -1.25, then students can enter the answer in decimal form into the box as negative sign, which is the hyphen symbol, 1, period, and a 5. Repeating decimals should be entered as fractions, not decimals. Non-terminating, non-repeating decimal answers cannot be entered into a fill-in-the-blank box. Students should also not enter a square root or a cube root symbol inside fill-in-the-blank answer box. Students do not need to place commas in their answer. For example, if the answer is 10,000, then students should enter 10000 inside the fill-in-the-blank box. If a student wishes to change or remove their answer to a fill-in-the-blank item, simply use the backspace key on the keyboard. This slide provides an example of a fraction model item. The question is asking students about their understanding of equivalent fractions and how to model them. As one can see, the darkened section of the top pie is 1/4 of the total pie. Using a different whole number denominator so that the fraction is equivalent to 1/4 is what the student needs to do to successfully complete the response in the bottom pie. An answer such as 2/8 would be correct. The more icons should be selected for an additional slice of pie or piece of pie. Next, the student should go to a section or piece of pie and select or click the number of sections to be darkened, colored in, so that the two fractional models are equivalent. For example, 2/8. Please note that any pie that has a fraction shaded that is equivalent but not identical to 1/4 would be counted as a correct response. This slide shows the correct answer to the item on the previous slide. To obtain this answer, the student needs to realize that 1/4 is equal to 2/8. Then the student must click on More 6 times, as each time More is clicked, an additional cut is made to the pie. 6 more cuts yields 8 total slices or pieces of pie. To shade a slice, here to make the slices purple in color, a student needs to click or tap inside that piece or slice of pie. In this question, 2 of the 8 pieces or slices need to be darkened to show a fraction equivalent to 1/4. Also, please notice that a student can select fewer slices to remove cuts of the pie or select a total reset, which means that all changes the student made to the shape are removed. Table match items ask students to match one item in a row with another item in a column. In these items, students should select the box at the intersection between the two equivalent options. For example, in the row showing 1/2 on the left-hand column, the correct response is at the intersection of this row with the column showing a circle that is 1/2 shaded. This slide is an example of a point graph item. Here, students are expected to select a point which could be the 4th vertex of a parallelogram. For this question, there are 2 possible correct answers available to plot on the grid: 1/4 or 7/4. Students move the cursor until the intersection of the crosshairs coincides with the point's location they wish to select. Or, if they are using a tablet, the students simply tap where they wish the point to appear. Line plot items authentically measure student abilities by requiring students to create the plot rather than choose a plot from a list of choices. Students may click or tap above each mark on the number line to add an X to the plot. To remove an X, students simply click or tap that X and it will disappear. A correctly completed plot for this item is shown in the bottom right corner of this slide. On the next few slides, we will show examples of items that will appear from the grades 5 through 6 band. On this slide, we have an example of a drop-down item. For each of the 3 down arrows to the right of the word choose, a list will appear once the down arrow is selected. These 3 lists are shown together on the above slide, but only one of the 3 lists will display at one time. For the first choose, the division symbol needs to be chosen. This is done by moving the cursor over the symbol and selecting or clicking on it. For the second box, the X or multiplication symbol should be selected, and for the third box, the correct answer 6 should be selected. The item on this slide shows a grade 5 multiple select item. In this type of item, there is often more than one correct response in the answer list. In this example, precisely 3 of the 6 answer choices are correct, A, D, and E. One thing to note with a multiple select item is that for all the elementary grades, 3 through 5, students will be told exactly how many answer choices to select. For the secondary grades, 6 through 8 and 10, students will be told to select all that apply. So secondary students will not know exactly how many answer choices comprise the answer. Please note that there is always at least one correct answer for these items. This question is known as a drag and drop item. Once the student has completed the calculations, the student will select the box to the right which shows the correct answer and drag it into the appropriate empty space on the left. Each time that an answer is selected, it is removed from the list to the right, eliminating answer choices for the remaining parts of the question. In the lower right corner, the correct median, mean, and mode have been dropped into the proper location. Please notice that the answer choice list has decreased from 8 numbers to 5 numbers. Bar graph items provide a way for students to create bar graphs from a data set. This slide shows an example of an original bar graph with small blue arrows across the bottom of the graph. These bars are adjustable and can be dragged up or down to create the bar graph as desired. Students simply select the bar they wish to adjust and drag it to the appropriate height. This particular item falls into the constructed response, extended response category, where a student needs to use words, symbols, and/or equations to explain the answer. The student is being asked to show the thought process used in reaching a solution to the question. Part A is the thought process portion of this item. Please notice the show all work instructions. At some point in the Part A explanation, a student needs to type the expression 8x plus 13y. In order to do this, the student can just use the keyboard or a combination of the keyboard and math symbols or relations from the equation builder. The student is to then type 8 followed by the letter x. A blank space can then be inserted using the spacebar. At that point, the student should go to the math symbols in the equation builder. Since we have the addition or the plus sign, that should be selected. A blank space can then be inserted using the spacebar. A 13 is then typed followed by the letter y. So the answer for part A should now be complete, 8x plus 13y. That answer should display below Show All Work and the Undo, Redo trash can buttons. Part B is a fill-in-the-blank item. The correct answer for Part B is 79, since 8 times 5 plus 13 times 3 equals 40 plus 39, which equals 79. In Part B's response window, type 79. Should you need to do so, please refer back to slide 4 of this presentation regarding how to respond to a fill-in-the-blank item. Also, please notice the keypad icons, which are to the right of the answer box in Part A. The 4 basic operations, plus minus sign, negative sign, alternative symbols for multiplication and division, equal sign, not equal sign, fraction symbol, mixed number symbol, base to the power, square root, cube root, pi, parentheses, degree symbol, and absolute value are all available to be selected from the keypad. Also, please take note of the relations icons and the geometry icons as well. ISTEP Plus Part 1 consists only of constructed response, extended response items. All of the other item types shown in this presentation appear only on the ISTEP Plus Part 2.
The next 2 slides will show examples from the grades 7 and 8 ISTEP Plus experience. This slide shows a linear function graph item. Since this question is asking for the student to graph a line and only 2 distinct points are needed to determine a unique line, a student only needs to identify 2 points which lie on the line that needs to be graphed in order to create the correct response. 1 point on the line is given, -2, 1. So the student locates the point -2, 1 on the graph and clicks on it or taps it. Utilizing the slope of 1/4 to move horizontally 4 units and vertically 1 unit yields a second point on the line, 2, 2. Once the student selects the second point on the graph, a line is automatically drawn connecting the 2 points. This is a number line item. In this item, the first step the student must complete is to solve the inequality. The second step is to provide the correct response on the number line. Once the student determines the correct response is n is greater than or equal to 60, the graphing can begin. Since this is not a strict inequality, meaning that the correct response has an or equal to in addition to the greater than, the or equal to portion will need to be represented by a closed or darkened circle. The greater than 60 portion of the inequality means that there also needs to be an arrow or ray pointing to the right. The student will select the appropriate symbol from the 8 options in the solution set indicator, which appears below the number line. For this item, the symbol appears in the bottom row, third column from the left. Once the blue symbol is selected, the student then clicks on the number line at the appropriate starting point, in this case 60. The closed point will appear at 60, and the ray, shown in blue, will appear pointing to the right of the point. A correct student response is shown. Please notice that once a symbol is selected, a second box with the word remove appears. Remove should be used when the student selects the wrong solution set indicator. The student can then select remove and pick any one of the 8 solution indicators shown. Also, please notice the blue ray starts at n equals 60. If the blue ray pops up at an incorrect starting point on the number line, then the student will need to adjust the starting point of the ray by selecting and grabbing that point and then moving it to the appropriate location on the number line. The last ISTEP Plus Experience online math example we will discuss is from grade 10. This is a nonlinear function graph item. First, please notice the graph choices given to the student: linear, quadratic, and exponential. The student is to select which type of graph the equation represents before going to the grid and graphing the equation. Because the highest degree of the independent variable in this polynomial is 2, the equation to be graphed is quadratic. When the gray quadratic section is selected, a parabola will appear on the grid. The vertex of the correct parabola is 1, -2, and another point on the parabola needs to be plotted. In this case, the student graphed the y-intercept, which is 0, 1. The parabola will now be drawn properly once the vertex, opening, and y-intercept have been accurately determined. Now let's look at some of the tools and features available to students on ISTEP Plus and ISTEP Plus Experience. The Review tool can be found on the top menu bar. When clicked, students are able to see a list of all items in the current section. Clicking on any question in the list will take the student directly to that question. At the bottom of the list of questions are 3 symbols. The symbol on the left is labeled All Questions and shows the total number of questions in the test section. The middle symbol is labeled Not Answered and shows an orange dot that contains the number of questions in the section that have not yet been answered by the student. The symbol on the right is labeled Bookmarks and shows a blue ribbon that contains the number of questions the student has bookmarked in the test section. Students are able to see which questions have not been answered and which questions they have bookmarked by looking for an orange dot to the left of a question or a blue ribbon to the right of a question, respectively. With the Bookmark tool, students are able to bookmark items for later review by simply clicking on the Bookmark button in the menu bar above a test question. When the button becomes shaded and the ribbon on the button turns blue, the item has been bookmarked. Students are able to see which items they have bookmarked via the Review tool, which was covered on the previous slide. In addition, the number of questions that have been bookmarked and the number of questions not answered within the test section are shown on the end of the section screen, which appears to students before the section can be submitted. The capital X button on the menu bar is the Answer Eliminator. The Answer Eliminator tool allows students to mark out answer choices that they know are incorrect. To use this tool, students need to click the Answer Eliminator button on the menu bar and then click on the answer choice or choices they wish to eliminate. Please note that students cannot select their response while the Answer Eliminator is enabled. To select a response for the item, students will need to click the arrow button next to the Answer Eliminator button to re-engage the mouse and then select their response. Both an inch ruler and centimeter ruler are provided for all grade levels of math in the online platform. To select the ruler, the student should click or tap on the ruler icon in the toolbar at the top of the page. That ruler will then appear on the screen. Students can drag the ruler to any place on the screen or tilt the ruler by moving the gray dots at either end of the ruler. When students have completed their measurements, they can either deselect the ruler icon or select the arrow icon on the toolbar to remove the ruler from the screen. A protractor is available to grades 5 through 8 and 10 on the testing platform. This tool, like the ruler, is accessed by selecting the protractor icon in the toolbar at the top of the page. Once this icon is selected, the protractor appears and can be moved to any place on the screen or tilted by using the gray circles on either end of the tool. A scientific calculator is provided for grades 6 through 8 for the calculator sessions of ISTEP Plus. If the calculator icon is grayed out and unable to be selected, this indicates that the students are working a session which does not allow for the use of a calculator. Students simply click or tap the buttons on the calculator or type numbers on their keyboards to use this tool. For grade 10, the calculator provided is a graphing calculator, specifically the TI-84 Plus, and it functions in the same way as the scientific calculator. However, the students will need to click the clear key between each different problem for which they use this calculator. In addition to the previously mentioned tools, another optional feature that can be used is the background/foreground color, also known as color contrast settings. The menu of options for color contrast can be found by clicking on the button to the right of the student name in the menu bar and then clicking on Change the background and foreground color. When the menu appears, a student can select from any of the choices shown. Once the selection has been made, clicking the X in the upper right corner of the contrast settings will close it. Please note, some students may want to make a different selection than black on white in order to help them read the text for each item, but most students will not need to make changes to those settings. While this feature is available for all students, it is recommended that it only be used by those students who have this accommodation requirement in their IEPs. Please note that for the math test sessions, students should not change the contrast to black on white. Using these settings, any number line question will be unable to be seen by the students. If a student does not respond to an item because he does not see it, the answer to the question will be marked as incorrect. The ISTEP Plus Experience Online for Math is only one of many helpful resources found on the Indiana Department of Education website. Here are some other resources that will be useful throughout the school year. The Indiana Academic Standards for Mathematics are located on the webpage link shown at the top of the slide. Additionally, the ISTEP Plus pages within the Office of Student Assessment website can be found at the next two links provided on this slide. Both of these pages contain a wealth of information. Some resources that are important to review and make use of throughout the year for math include the calculator policy, the graph paper guidance document, and math reference sheets, which are available on the ISTEP Plus web pages. Please note that there are math reference sheets used only in grades 4 through 8 and 10. Grade 3 does not have a math reference sheet. If you have any questions about this or other presentations or documents on the IDOE website that are related to assessment, please feel free to contact the Office of Student Assessment. Thank you for listening.